Hello class, welcome to our lesson today dealing with section 1.3. There's a lot of definitions and a lot of different pieces of information here with what's known as types of data. So you want to make sure you're organized about what's being asked when and how to deal with each scenario. So let's go and get started with the first set of definitions. The first set is dealing with what's known as a parameter versus what's known as a statistic. The only difference is that a parameter is a measurement that describes some type of population characteristic, and a statistic represents the exact same thing, but instead of a population characteristic, it's a sample characteristic. And so what you need to understand is there's a difference between these two when we run testing. Okay, so if it's a parameter, we can run one type of test and have one type of conclusion. In a statistic, we have a different type of test and possibly a different style of solution or conclusion to that situation. Okay, so for example, Indianapolis Star polls 25,000 sports fans, 65% plan to watch or attend the Indy 500. That's a statistic because I'm only sampling this group of sports fans. It's not all sports fans in the area. Second question, 6,000 members to vote for the Academy Awards for the Oscars. 52% chose Lord of the Ring, Return of the King as Best Picture the year that it won. That would be a parameter because the only group I care about is the 6,000 members that voted, which is all of them. The next category is dealing with quantitative data or categorical data. Quantitative data can also be written as numerical data. Okay, so those two things are synonyms. And that means they consist of numbers that represent some type of measurement or have some type of counting involved or anything that deals with where the numbers mean something and there's a difference between them. Categorical data you may see written as attribute data. It's also typically and commonly known as qualitative data. And that's where it's just naming or labeling, and it's not counting anything for a measurement. It's just kind of categories, hence the name categorical. So depending on the type of data that you have, you can run one type of statistical analysis versus the other. Okay, so some examples of this. Height of Olympic participants is quantitative because the height is a measurement style. Eye color of each student is categorical, also known as quantitative. And then the jerseys of football players on a team, don't just assume numbers are quantitative because the jersey numbers on a football team are qualitative or categorical. Just a little bit of insight to that. Most football numbers, depending on the number you have, you represent a certain position or a certain area of the field that you typically play on. So offensive linemen, for example, have a set of certain numbers and things like that. So they're actually more categorical rather than a measurement. So number one, for example, is not the best player on the football team. It just represents possibly a position and things of that nature. The next set of definitions to look at are what is known as discrete data and continuous or numerical data. Discrete data, you can think of it as kind of whole numbers or countable, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whereas continuous could be any number, so you could think that there could be decimals or half or things like that. There's not a set countable version for continuous data. Okay, it can be anywhere kind of on the number line. That's the difference between the two. So the weight of cows at the state fair is continuous because you could be any weight on a scale that you're looking at. It is interesting to note that if that question would have been asked many years ago, that would have been a discrete number because of the scale that was being used, probably only measured to the nearest pound or half pound. But now, because of technology, it's a continuous piece of information because of how it can be calculated. The number of pieces of candy in a jar or a container, think like the jelly bean idea, okay, where you look through the jelly bean or count how many jelly beans are, and the winner gets all the container. That's a discrete number. And the volume of orange juice consumed is continuous because that can be anything. That's probably going to be typically written as a whole number rather than a decimal, but it can still be a continuous number as you're looking at it from the situation of volume. Okay, the next 4 slides deal with what are known as the levels of measurement. The first one that we're going to look at is what's known as nominal measurement. Nominal measurement is just categorizing into groups. Okay, so you can think of like labeling or groups of names. And then the data isn't ordered in any way. There's not saying that one's better than the other, even though there may be opinion of what's better than the other or what's true or what's false. Okay, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily. Some of these things could be any type of survey, yes or no questions, party affiliation for national election, for example, a survey that could be sent out to you. It doesn't matter which option you pick. One's not better than the other. That's what's known as nominal level of measurement. Next is what's known as ordinal. And ordinal is the same idea as nominal. Okay, you have categories, but all of a sudden they're ranked. Okay, the only thing that's important about ordinal is we don't know the difference between first, second, third. There could be a huge gap between first and second and a small gap between second and third, but it's irrelevant to the situation. A good example of this would be grades. Okay, so if you have an A in a class and a friend has a B in a class, you can't say, oh, my percentage is 10% higher, because there's some leeway in between those numbers. Another idea would be like the top 10 pieces. I don't know if you do this when you go visit places. You check like things to do in the city that I'm in, or places to eat that I should go to, and they rank them. But one's not necessarily better, or how much better than the other. This idea could also be used for like gold, silver, bronze in the Olympics. For example, if I was racing against Usain Bolt and he just destroys me on the 100-meter dash and he gets the gold medal and I get silver somehow miraculously, if that were to happen, I wouldn't say, oh, I lost to Usain Bolt by 10 seconds. What I'd say is I got second place. And the person in third was only a half second behind me, okay, or whatever the measurement, probably much smaller for the 100-meter dash. That gap isn't relevant, okay, to gold, silver, bronze. It's just first, second, third. And so that's the idea of what ordinal level of measurements are. The next level of measurement is what is known as interval. This is similar to the ranking idea of ordinal, except now the difference between the numbers is meaningful. The trouble with interval levels of measurement is that there's not a natural starting spot or a location that says, oh, this is my base case. And probably the best example of that is anything dealing with temperature, mainly because temperature is a situation where you don't have a set zero location that says, oh, I can't go below that or I can't be higher than that. And temperature is kind of on a running scale. So body temperature and anything dealing with temperature is typically in this interval level of measurement. The next level is what is known as ratio. It's probably the highest level of measurement and deals with the most common pieces such as weights, heights, prices, because all of a sudden you could say, oh, this costs twice as much as somewhere else. There's a natural starting spot. And I think probably the most important thing is the third bullet point, which is saying if I say it's twice as much, do you know what that means? So if I have a particular product I'm trying to buy and I say, oh, it's this price here and it's twice as much at the other place, everyone knows what that's going to mean in terms of money and how much it costs. Okay, these levels are important because they help us figure out what procedure we're going to use. For our class, we're not going to be looking at that as vitally, but I want to at least give you an introduction to that. So for now, you just need to be able to pick the level and be able to say, okay, this is what I need to know for this level of measurement and understand kind of what that topic is talking about. Okay, just some review pieces of the things we've talked about because there are a lot of terms and definitions. Let's go back to statistic versus parameter. Among senators in Congress, 8% are independent. That would be a parameter because you can see what all the senators are. There's 3,000 crosswalks in New York City. 75% of them work properly. Again, a parameter because I'm checking all of the crosswalk buttons. Author selects 35 movies and found the money to be from ticket sales, and the average was 123 million. That would be a statistic because I didn't check every movie. I just checked a sample of all the movies. Discrete and continuous. Anything with receiving votes, such as this one, is going to be discrete. Volume of cola in a can would be continuous. Randomly checking a car at a safety point has 6 cylinders. That would be a discrete variable because you can only have a certain amount of cylinders. You can't be on continuous. This systolic blood pressure thing has multiple things. First off, you probably aren't going to see 61. Anyone that's involved in nursing would be able to explain why that is. This is technically a continuous variable, but it's described as discrete because the numbers are only certain numbers that are given. So if you were to pick, it's probably on the discrete side because of how the data is collected. 4 levels of measurement. Types of movies, you don't care which is which. That would be the lowest level, which is nominal. Temperature would be interval because it has a measurement in between that matters. Measurement of amount of greenhouse gases emitted by cars, that would be on the highest, which would be ratio. And then ranking the cars from Department of Transportation would be ordinal because you can rank them from highest to lowest, but the gap is not the same in all of them. Okay, that's a lot of information. You want to make sure you got the definitions down and make sure that you understand the differences between the cases. Again, your homework's pretty straightforward with knowing the differences between them, but you want to make sure you're ready for the test in order to understand them. Have a good day, everyone.